Today, brace yourself for a thrilling ride with The Last Call, a story so gripping it'll keep you on the edge of your seat. The sky was a bruised purple, threatening rain as Emma Parker pulled her beat-up sedan into the shadow of the old mill. Its decrepit walls stood like ancient sentinels, their silence mocking the chaos inside Emma's head. Tonight, she wasn't here for a late-night stroll. She was here for answers, and time was not on her side. Emma had been a reporter for 10 years, but nothing had prepared her for the mystery of the disappearances in Grayson Hollow. It started with small things, a missing cat, a lost dog. But over the past month, people began vanishing, one by one, without a trace. The local authorities were stumped, and the small town was gripped by paranoia. When Emma received an anonymous tip about tonight's meeting at the old mill, she knew it was a chance to uncover something crucial. She parked her car, slipped on her black gloves, and took a deep breath. The wind whistled through the broken windows of the mill, a haunting tune that seemed to say, "Turn back." But Emma didn't turn back. She pulled out her flashlight and a notepad, her steps echoing in the stillness as she approached the mill's entrance. The heavy wooden door creaked open, revealing a large, dusty room littered with debris. The only sound was the steady drip of water from the ceiling. Emma's flashlight beam swept across the room. The beams of light revealed a makeshift stage at one end and scattered chairs arranged haphazardly. The air was thick with dust and the smell of rust and decay. She could feel her heart racing. She wasn't alone. From the far corner, she saw a figure step out of the shadows, a man in a dark coat with a wide-brimmed hat. His face was obscured, but his presence was unmistakable. Emma's instincts told her he was the source of the tip. She took a cautious step forward, her eyes fixed on him. "Emma Parker, I presume?" The man's voice was smooth, with an edge of amusement. "How do you know my name?" Emma's voice was steady, but she was alert, every muscle in her body tense. "I know a lot of things," he said cryptically. "But tonight, it's about what you don't know." Before Emma could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind. She turned to see a group of people, their faces masked by the dim light, and their clothing dark and indistinguishable. They moved with purpose, taking their seats in the rows of chairs. Emma noticed their expressions were a mix of fear and determination. The man in the coat raised his hand, signaling for silence. "Welcome, everyone. We are gathered here tonight for a special purpose. The time has come to reveal what's been hidden for so long." Emma's curiosity was piqued. She moved closer, trying to make out the faces of the attendees. The group's murmurs filled the room, a low, anxious hum. She glanced at her watch, midnight. She had an hour before the deadline she had set for herself to solve this case. The man on the stage began to speak, his voice carrying an unsettling calmness. "For years, Grayson Hollow has been a sanctuary, a place where people come to escape their troubles. But lately, something dark has been festering beneath its surface." Emma's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The missing pieces of the puzzle were about to fall into place. There's a reason for the disappearances, the man continued. A reason that ties back to the very foundation of this town. And tonight, we are going to expose it. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Emma, too, was captivated. She leaned forward, her pen poised over her notepad, ready to capture every word. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small, dusty box. He opened it to reveal an old, leather-bound book. "This," he said, "is the key to everything. It contains the secrets that have been buried for decades." Emma's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. The book was filled with handwritten notes, sketches, and faded photographs. Each page seemed to tell a story of rituals, symbols, and a dark history that had been kept hidden from the public. The book belonged to a man named Jonathan Hale, the man said. He was the founder of Grayson Hollow and a practitioner of dark arts. He believed that by making sacrifices, he could ensure the prosperity of the town. Emma's mind raced. Hale's name was familiar. It had come up in the research she had done, a distant ancestor of one of the town's prominent families. The connections were becoming clearer. But why now? Someone from the crowd asked. Why are the disappearances happening now? The man's face was unreadable. The old rituals are being performed again. Someone is trying to revive the dark practices to gain control. The disappearances are sacrifices. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Emma's stomach churned. If what the man was saying was true, it meant the town was in grave danger. The cult that Hale had started had not only survived, but had found a way to continue its practices. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking the passage of time. Emma glanced at it nervously. The tension in the room was palpable. She needed to find out who was behind this and stop them before it was too late. As the man closed the book and looked out over the crowd, Emma's eyes locked with his. "And what happens now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. He smiled slightly, a cold, unsettling smile. "Now, we expose the truth. But be warned, once the truth is out, there's no turning back." The crowd erupted in whispers and murmurs. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She had a feeling that the real danger was not just in the ritual, but in the people who were behind it. Just then, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Emma's flashlight fell from her hand, clattering to the floor. Panic set in among the crowd. Emma fumbled to pick up her flashlight, her hands trembling. The darkness seemed to close in around her. A shrill scream pierced the air. Emma's heart raced as she scrambled to turn on her flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a scene of chaos. People were running, bumping into each other in the confusion. The man in the coat was nowhere to be seen. Emma spotted a shadowy figure near the exit and dashed towards it. The figure moved quickly, and Emma followed, her flashlight bobbing with each hurried step. She burst through the door into the cold night air, her breath visible in the chill. The figure was running towards the woods, disappearing into the undergrowth. Emma pursued, her heart pounding. The ground was uneven, and branches scraped against her skin. She pushed through the trees, determined to catch up. The figure ahead was elusive, always just out of reach. Suddenly, the figure stopped and turned around. Emma's flashlight illuminated the face of a woman, her features twisted in fear. She was clutching a torn piece of paper, the edges frayed and stained. "Please," the woman begged, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. They'll kill us all." Emma's breath came in ragged gasps. Who's behind this?" The woman's eyes darted around nervously. "The town council. They've been hiding it for years. They're the ones performing the rituals." Emma's blood ran cold. The town council. The very people who were supposed to protect the town were the ones perpetuating the darkness. Suddenly, a sharp noise echoed through the forest, a gunshot. Emma and the woman ducked instinctively. The woman's eyes widened in terror. "They're coming," she whispered. "We have to go." Emma took the woman's hand, and they ran through the trees, the sound of footsteps and voices growing louder behind them. They reached the edge of the forest and stumbled into a clearing, where Emma's car was parked. The woman threw open the passenger door and slid inside. Emma followed, her hands shaking as she started the engine. The car roared to life, and Emma sped away, leaving the dark forest behind. As they drove, Emma glanced at the woman, whose face was pale and stricken. "What's your name?" Emma asked. "Lydia," the woman replied. "Lydia Hale." Emma's eyes widened in shock. Lydia Hale, the name was significant. It was said that the Hale family had vanished years ago, leaving behind only rumors of their dark practices. "What do you know about the council?" Emma pressed. Lydia took a deep breath. "They've been using the rituals to maintain their power. They believe that as long as they keep sacrificing people, they'll stay in control. My father was one of them, but he wanted out. That's why he disappeared." Emma absorbed the information. It was a tangled web of deception and betrayal, and the stakes were higher than she had imagined. "We need to expose this," Emma said. "We have to go to the authorities." Lydia shook her head. "The council controls everything. If we go to the authorities, they'll be compromised. We need to gather evidence ourselves and take it public." Emma nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They drove in silence, the weight of their mission hanging heavily in the air. As dawn approached, the first light of day broke through the clouds, casting a pale glow over the landscape. When they reached Emma's office, Lydia and Emma worked quickly, compiling all the evidence they had. Emma's fingers flew over the keyboard, sending out emails to trusted journalists and preparing a comprehensive report. Lydia paced nervously, occasionally glancing at the clock. They had precious little time before the council's influence could close in on them. Emma glanced at Lydia, her brow furrowed. "We need to get this information out to the public before they can stop us. Do you have any more documents or evidence from your father?" Lydia nodded, pulling out a file from her bag. He kept a journal. It's filled with details about the rituals and the council's activities. I've also got some photographs that might help. Emma took the file and opened it. The journal was a damning record of the council's dark practices, complete with dates and names. The photographs showed clandestine meetings and ritualistic symbols. With this evidence, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. The sun was climbing higher, and the morning was brightening. Emma knew they had to act fast. She quickly composed an email with the crucial documents attached, sent it to multiple news outlets, and scheduled a press conference for later that afternoon. As they prepared to leave, Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. "We know what you're doing. Stop now or face the consequences." Emma's heart raced. The council was aware of their actions. Lydia looked over Emma's shoulder, her face pale. "They are watching us." Emma's heart raced. The council was aware of their actions. Lydia looked over Emma's shoulder, her face pale. "They are watching us." Emma's heart raced. The council was aware of their actions. Lydia looked over Emma's shoulder, her face pale. "They are watching us." Emma's heart raced. The council was aware of their actions. Lydia looked over Emma's shoulder, her face pale. "They are watching us." As Emma spoke, she noticed a group of men in suits at the back of the room. Their expressions were stern and focused. They were clearly members of the council, and their presence was unsettling. Emma could feel the tension rise as she continued her presentation. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the entrance. The doors flew open, and several more council members burst in, their faces twisted in anger. They began shouting, accusing Emma and Lydia of fabricating stories and trying to ruin their reputations. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the entrance. The doors flew open, and several more council members burst in, their faces twisted in anger. They began shouting, accusing Emma and Lydia of fabricating stories and trying to ruin their reputations. The room descended into chaos, with reporters scrambling for interviews and camera flashes going off. Emma and Lydia were escorted out by security, their path through the crowd blocked by angry council members. Once outside, Emma and Lydia hurried to Emma's car. "We need to get out of here," Lydia said, her voice trembling. "They are not going to stop. They'll do whatever it takes to cover this up." Emma nodded, starting the engine. As they drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The council members' cars were tailing them, their dark windows reflecting the early afternoon sun. Emma nodded, starting the engine. As they drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The council members' cars were tailing them, their dark windows reflecting the early afternoon sun. Lydia pointed to an old cabin she recognized from her childhood. "There's a cabin up ahead. My family used to use it as a retreat. It's secluded and should provide some cover." Emma nodded and turned towards the cabin. They arrived just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and red. The cabin was old but sturdy, surrounded by dense woods. Emma and Lydia entered, locking the door behind them. Emma nodded and turned towards the cabin. They arrived just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and red. The cabin was old but sturdy, surrounded by dense woods. Emma and Lydia entered, locking the door behind them. As the night deepened, Emma and Lydia huddled around the laptop, watching the developments. Lydia had calmed down, but her eyes remained haunted by the night's events. Emma was exhausted but determined. She knew the fight wasn't over. The next morning, Emma and Lydia were woken by a pounding on the cabin door. Emma's heart raced. Had the council tracked them down? Lydia's face was pale as she grabbed a nearby baseball bat, ready to defend themselves. Emma cautiously approached the door and peeked through a small window. To her relief, she saw a familiar face, Detective Brian Cole, a trusted friend and ally. Emma opened the door, and Cole stepped inside, his expression serious. "I've been trying to reach you," Cole said. "The situation is escalating. The council is desperate, and they've gone to extreme lengths to stop this information from spreading. But it's too late now. The public is demanding answers." Emma sighed in relief. "We've got to keep the pressure on them. We need to make sure the story stays in the spotlight, and that justice is served." Emma sighed in relief. "We've got to keep the pressure on them. We need to make sure the story stays in the spotlight, and that justice is served." Emma and Lydia spent the day at the cabin, working with Cole and his team to ensure the story continued to gain traction. They provided additional evidence, including Lydia's personal testimony and the records from her father's journal. By evening, the story had reached a tipping point. The council was under intense scrutiny, and investigations were launched into their activities. Public outrage was at its peak, and the council members were scrambling to defend themselves. As the days passed, Emma and Lydia remained in hiding, staying updated on the progress of the investigations. The council members were arrested, and the town of Grayson Hollow began to heal from the darkness that had plagued it for so long. One evening, as Emma and Lydia prepared to leave the cabin, Lydia looked at Emma with gratitude. "Thank you for everything. You've not only exposed the truth, but also given us a chance to start anew." Emma smiled, her exhaustion fading as she looked out at the now peaceful landscape. It was a team effort. And sometimes, the truth is the only thing that can set things right. As they drove away from the cabin, Emma and Lydia felt a sense of closure. The town of Grayson Hollow was on the path to recovery, and the darkness that had once shadowed it was beginning to lift. Emma knew there would be more stories to uncover, more battles to fight. But for now, she was content knowing that she had made a difference. The sun set on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the world. Emma and Lydia drove into the future, leaving behind the shadows of the past and embracing the promise of a new beginning.